You've made it through the first stage of labor, opening the cervix. You've made it through the second stage of labor, pushing your baby out. You're done, right? Wrong. This is what you need to know about the third and final stage of labor. Hi, I'm Melissa Evans. I started off as a childbirth educator in 2004 and have since added lactation educator and child car seat educator and parenting educator and doula and all kinds of other things as well, working hard to keep families safe and happy and connected. I know it's really important for expecting families to have quality childbirth classes and that it's really hard on schedules and checkbooks. So here I am offering my classes for free on YouTube so you can watch them whenever you want, wherever you are. Please know that I am not a medical professional or a lawyer, so use common sense and talk things over with professionals that you trust. Most of the time, this passes without much ado. Parents are happily admiring and cuddling their new baby. But here's what's going on in mom's body and babies and what care providers are working on while you are blissfully distracted. The first concept is the involution of the uterus. Once baby is born, the placenta is still attached to the uterus, and of course your uterus is not made out of blue yarn, and your placenta would actually be inside it, but just for visual sake, we're going to put it on the outside, okay? And that's still connected to baby. This needs to not be there anymore. The placenta is the only temporary organ, and its time is up. So we need the uterus and the placenta to detach. How does that happen, one might ask? With more contractions. It doesn't sound fair, does it? I'm so sorry, but really, it's okay. It's going to be okay. You get to hold your baby, and these ones aren't nearly as intense. Where the placenta is attached is kind of like a large wound. So we want the uterus to shrink back down. This helps the placenta to detach, and it helps that rather large wound to shrink up and those blood vessels to close off as well. This is really important because the prolonged bleeding is the risk of hemorrhage. When the placenta detaches, there's typically a gush of blood, and that's normal and expected. In fact, mom's blood volume has increased by 50% in preparation for that. Your body set up a savings account. How cool is that? The prolonged bleeding is what we need to head off, and that's why we need this uterus to continue to shrink. We need more contractions. So to help with this involution, care providers will often use Pitocin or Syntocin if you're in England. This is a synthetic version of oxytocin, your body's natural hormone that is released during orgasm, that creates contractions, and also the milk ejection reflex. Dr. Michel Odent would call it the love hormone in a very thick French accent. I tend to call it the squeezing hormone. Another beautiful way to generate more oxytocin in your body is by breastfeeding. And hey, look at that. You've got a hungry baby who's ready to breastfeed. It's almost like this was evolved and planned as a process that works pretty darn well or something. Cool, huh? Now, using IV Pitocin, if there is an emergency, is an excellent tool, and I'm really grateful for the technology. I just get a little bit worried when it gets used routinely. And if mom has an IV, sometimes it can be administered without even talking to her about it. And that really bothers me. Other tools that can be used if there is an emergency are Cytotec or misoprostol, Methergin, and even an intramuscular IM shot of Pitocin. On the hippie side, some have used essential oil helichrysum on mom's back or clary sage essential oil on acupressure points on ankles to help stimulate contractions. Homeopathic arnica is excellent for bleeding, and there are even stories where midwives will use a piece of the cord or even a piece of the placenta inside mom's cheek, and that does an excellent job of slowing and stopping bleeding. I know that doesn't sound very appealing, but it is more appealing than a hemorrhage. Next, we're going to look at the birth of the placenta itself. Now that it's nice and detached, it's time to exit mom's body. Once it's out, things feel so much better. It's amazing. This can take 5 to 45 minutes to be born, and that is totally within the realm of normalcy. In Colorado, home birth regulation requires that if the placenta is not born within 1 hour, it needs to be a hospital transfer. So that tells me that if it's born before an hour is up, we're totally working just fine. There's no cause for concern. After that, I get it. We need to do some things to help it out. Sometimes care providers get anxious way before that hour mark even, and we'll try to get that placenta to come out. A technique that is often used is called cord traction, where they pull on the cord. This runs some pretty significant risks. If this is still greatly attached to the uterus, it might come off, but maybe not all of it. And if pieces are left inside the uterus, that's called retained placenta. When the placenta is inside mom's uterus, it tells her body, hey, there's a baby here, send blood. So if there's a piece of the placenta, it continues to send blood. So the chance of significant bleeding afterwards goes up. Also, because mom's body thinks the baby's still inside, it doesn't really think that there's a need to make milk. It can drastically impact milk supply. And unfortunately also runs the risk of infection, pretty significant. Another possible complication of cord traction is snapping the cord. No fun. Or if it's really, really, really well attached to the uterus, it can actually pull the uterus out with it. Uterine prolapse, also not fun. Please note there is a massive difference between pulling on the cord to force it to release from the uterus and a placenta that's already detached and is maybe sitting in the birth canal and just pulling it to lift it out. That's perfect. We want it out. That's all well and good. But the forceful pulling carries some risks. Number 3 is cord clamping, and this might not be in chronological order. That's something that you'll want to discuss with your care provider. When the placenta is still attached to the uterus and the cord is still attached to baby, that cord is transporting oxygen-rich blood to baby, which is a 2 to 4 minute insurance policy that the baby is still getting the oxygen that they need. Once the cord is clamped, and no, this is not an actual clamp, and nor is that an actual placenta, but you know. We don't want this to be too graphic for YouTube. That cord stopped working. The cutting is not what stops the functionality. It's the actual clamping of the cord. And sometimes care providers will do that before they even hand baby up to mother. If you would prefer delayed cord clamping, there are some benefits. Baby can gently transition from an aquatic animal to an air-breathing animal. Baby can get the 25% of their blood volume that's in the placenta right after birth so that they are not born with a hemorrhage effectively. If delayed cord clamping is important to you, I would highly recommend discussing that with your care provider in pregnancy and putting it on your birth plan, and maybe even reminding them during pushing so that they can comply with what you wish. Now, some families are happy with 30 seconds, and most care providers are actually starting to do that automatically. Yay, progress! Some families want longer, 2, 5, 10 minutes, even an hour. Some families want to wait until the cord stops pulsating, which is awesome. However, I would recommend checking that at the baby's navel, not in the middle. This can take significantly longer. Other families would like to wait until the placenta itself is completely born. That actually kind of makes sense to me because then we know it's done. One of our local birth centers will actually put the placenta in a bag and leave it next to mom for an hour or 2. There is truly no rush. There is no reason to cut this immediately. Back in the dark ages, I've heard stories where care providers were told that baby wouldn't breathe until the cord was cut. That is absolutely false. Baby will breathe just fine with it intact. Because some care providers have heard of the benefits of delayed cord clamping, they'll try to rush the process and milk the cord and force blood into baby. Baby's system was not designed for that. That carries some pretty significant risks. Honestly and truly, the best course of action is patience, just letting nature take its course. Occasionally, I've heard of care providers who are unwilling to let mom hold baby while the cord is intact, fearing that if baby is above placenta, then all the blood will rush out of baby back into the placenta. My brain is above my heart, and yet my brain is still getting oxygen. There is a pump in process. Now, doing some Lion King maneuver might not be the best of ideas, but there really is no reason that a family should have to choose between immediate bonding, which I'm pretty sure is a psychological need, and delayed cord clamping, which is also a biological need. They are not mutually exclusive. I often hear care providers say that they're willing to allow delayed cord clamping if everything is going great. I cannot express how frustrating this is to me. The babies who are not doing great need that cord even more than the ones who are. I look forward to the day when hospitals recognize that mom and baby's bodies are already working together for both of their betterment, and they can bring their tools to the mother baby and work with them as a unit instead of disrupting and whisking baby away and severing that cord that's doing what it needs to do to keep baby healthy. Number 4 is cutting the cord. No, you won't have craft scissors. They actually give you medical grade scissors, but I don't keep those in my house. Cutting the cord is typically an honor reserved for the partner. Some families like to have both parents cut the cord together in a symbolic ceremony, ending a pregnancy and entering parenthood as a team. I kind of like that one. Some things you should know. This will not hurt baby. The cord is like a hair. There are no nerve endings in there. Also, that cord is really chewy. You'll be surprised. It takes some effort to cut through that, so don't let that throw you for a loop. I'm also going to say that if cutting the cord were risky or required a great amount of training and skill, care providers wouldn't hand scissors to just anyone who's in the room with mom. They would do it themselves. So really, honestly and truly, you're fine, you're safe, relax. You cannot hurt anything unless you intentionally tried, and if that were the case, you wouldn't be there anyways. So it's fine. You're going to do just great. There's a concept called a lotus birth, where the cord is never cut. The placenta is salted and wrapped, and the cord might be wrapped, and it is kept with baby until the cord shrivels and falls off and the entire placenta is released. Proponents marvel at how gentle a process this is. While I find it to be a very romantic notion, in a day and age with car seats, it's not quite as practical. I also can't think of any instances of other placental animals keeping the placenta attached. Even in nature, mother chews the cord to detach them. Now, looking at beyond, there are cord blood banks who will advertise relentlessly to expectant families, kind of feeding off of their worst fears. To participate, delayed cord clamping can be kept at a very minimal, if any at all. So it's typically an either-or decision. So let's look at the two sides of this scale. The chance of collecting enough blood, of that blood being viable, and of baby actually needing that blood later in life are lottery chances. The chance of baby needing that blood immediately right after birth are 100%. I have no numbers on this. However, I really wonder if those conditions that cord blood banking typically is used to solve, how many of those cases could have been avoided if baby had the stem cells they were supposed to right after birth. Again, I don't have that data. It's just something that's been bouncing around in my head. If you happen to know, let me know in the comments. I would love to be educated on that. The last I heard, blood banks are no longer accepting donations because they were out of space. So before you spend that money, make sure you really look at your risks and consider both sides. Another choice that you get to make is what to do with the placenta afterwards. Care providers are happy to dispose of the placenta or even potentially sell it to biomed companies as part of their practice. Some families would prefer to take it home with them. It was your baby's first friend in the womb. Some ceremony of respect might feel more appealing. Some families will plant a tree over the placenta. It nourished your baby for 9 months. Now it can nourish the earth. Some people get creative and do some placental art, some prints or otherwise. The fetal side actually does look like a tree of life, one might even say. Another option is placenta encapsulation. If we do look at other land mammals, most of them eat the placenta, but I mean, really, who wants to do that? I'm a pretty adventurous eater, and that's beyond my comfort level as well. The concept of encapsulation is the placenta is taken and sliced very thin and dehydrated completely and then ground up and put in capsules. Now you can eat your placenta without having to eat your placenta. Many moms find that it helps them recover faster, it increases their milk supply, and balances out their mood, which is all pretty stinking awesome. It's totally something that you can do on your own. Find a tutorial. It's actually a service I provide in the Denver area, so if you look at my website, there's a link down there. I do go through my entire steps if you would like some idea of what that entails. So there you go. That's what's happening after your baby is born when the placenta is doing its final rounds. And that's what your care provider is up to while you're happily admiring your sweet new one. What do you think? Is your birth plan going to get any revisions over this? Let me know in the comments. Please like the video, share it with your friends, and be sure to subscribe. I'll be posting new videos every week, and I don't want you to miss out. Until next time, know your options and own your birth.